Hey everybody, this is DJ.
And Chris.
Today we're talking to Scott Edwards, who is the EVP, which is the Executive Vice President and Head of Creative Advertising at Fox. This is a big one, guys. Just letting you know. Today we talk about a lot of pretty cool stuff. Gordon Ramsay, creative advertising and marketing, the advertising process, marketing campaigns for Special Forces, The Masked Singer, Hell's Kitchen, and all those cool shows that you've seen on Fox, basically all of it, and how to get started in creative advertising. So let's get into this one. So we are here today with Scott Edwards. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. For the people at home who forgot to read the sides, do you mind giving us your backstory, a little elevator pitch?
Quick backstory in, let's say, 60 seconds or less. Current role, Executive Vice President, Head of Creative Advertising at Fox Entertainment, which is the scripted and unscripted arm of the Fox Corporation. So oversee the team that creates all of the on-air promos, trailers, key arts, custom social digital for our campaigns for our entertainment content. Came this way via an agency, AV Squad, where I was a senior producer, senior creative director, overseeing a bunch of theatrical campaigns. My primary background is theatrical marketing, where I spent most of my career prior to coming to Fox. And prior to that were several other agencies. And prior to that was one stint at New Line Cinema on the creative advertising side, overseeing domestic campaigns for a series of hits and misses during a particular year in the 2000s. And prior to that, undergraduate degree in theater and telecom and a graduate degree in film and advertising, which I use both of those degrees every day, and came up through the editing route, like really had a strong editing sensibility and music sensibility when I was younger for a love of music, and turned it into really strong editing in film school, which led to a role as an editor, as a trailer editor, which led to producing, which led to creative directing, which led to running a department, which led to New Line and agencies in here. So I value that as much as anything else because I get it from an editor's point of view. When you give a note to an editor, you got to give it in a way where they can understand it and they can actually implement it versus giving them silly notes or something like that. So through the creative route to the executive chair.
Awesome.
That's crazy. That's actually really cool. Yeah. Start as an editor and be where you're at now. Like I would never have thought that route at all.
Yeah.
It didn't even cross my mind.
That's awesome.
That's insane.
So what is the difference between sort of creative advertising and marketing? Is there a difference?
Yes, there is. That's a very insightful inquiry because a lot of people think they're the same thing, and they're not. Creative advertising is the largest team that sits inside the largest department, which is marketing. And marketing is the team that's in charge of or responsible for bringing something to market. It's not the team necessarily that creates the creative assets that are shown in the process of bringing something to market. So another way to look at it is there's a whole team of people up on the third floor. I'm on the second floor for reference on the Fox Studios lot here in Los Angeles. There's a whole team on the third floor whose roles and responsibilities are to strategically think about where do we place these things, these assets, these trailers, these TV spots, these social posts, these custom social digital assets, billboards, print, Instagram. Do we do filters do we do TikTok videos? Where do the things go? Because who are we trying to reach? And where are those people? So marketing is looking at it from a strategic point of view or from a strategy perspective. And if they're busy turning and aiming these guns toward the people they're trying to reach, they need a shell to put in that thing to fire in that direction and say, check this out. We're kind of the ammo team. We make all of the assets that get sent out or shown in some particular place or fashion. And so we're a little less on the direct strategy side, although we should be strategic in the way we make our assets. We should be thinking about who's this for. Therefore, I might use music that would appeal to that demographic, or I might use this particular character as a central point of this particular piece, or I might stay away from a character that I know is off-putting or something like that. And so there is strategy on both sides, but there's the marketing strategy and then there's the creative strategy, and they're slightly different. And the creative team really is a team that's made a distinct decision to stand on the creative side of the fence. Like they don't necessarily want to be in the trenches on where will these things go. That's not where they think logistically, but they do need to think holistically. And I don't know if that fully answers the question, but creative advertising really does focus on working with the clay to take something and make it into a shape that's most appealing, while getting information from the marketing team saying where it's going to go, who it's supposed to reach, when they're going to see it, in what show. Like, we know a spot's going to go in the NFL because they tell us there's a spot in the NFL on Sunday.
Yeah.
We might craft that spot a little bit differently than we would for a spot that's going to go inside Masked Singer, or going to go inside some other primarily female viewing show, right? Or female audience. So that's kind of the distinct difference between strictly marketing and strictly creative advertising.
Okay.
So you guys are communicating all the time then?
All the time. All the time. We have a meeting at least twice a week, creative review. It's my meeting where we're all rolling up to the president of marketing, but we're showing assets and getting feedback on the creative. Simultaneously, there are strategy people in the room, there are social people in the room, there are on-air placement people in the room, there are off-air placement people in the room, there are research people in the room, there are publicists in the room. And any one of those assets could be played, and someone might say, well, we're trying to put this here, so let's change this. Or, oh, this is in conjunction with Amazon, we got to change the tag, which is a technical thing. Or someone from publicity might raise their hand and say, hey, there might be a challenge with that. Or someone from broadcast standards and practices might say, you actually can't say that line because it's going to be offensive inside any programming that's friendly toward families, like MasterChef Junior or Masked Singer. And wait for it, there could be someone from legal in there, and they might say, you're not allowed to use the phrase jaws of life because that's a trademarked, copywritten thing in your marketing. You can't use that. Even though it's in the show, you have to refrain from that story beat because we don't have the agreement with that particular owner of that particular thing to use it in marketing, right?
That's
so there are
crazy.
Any number of voices outside of creative advertising. Or someone might raise their hand from music. We have a group called Fox Entertainment Music, and they might say, hey, we know you love that song, but you know what? The artist doesn't like you or Fox or that show, so you can't license it. No matter how much money you throw at them, they won't let you use it. So find another song. So there are a lot of different voices coming in on the creative process.
Wow.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah,
well,
so
100-person meeting.
Yeah.
What type of projects do you oversee?
All of our scripted and unscripted and animation properties. So if it's anything in the animation lineup on Sunday nights, you're familiar with Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, Simpsons, etc., KRAPOPOLIS, GRIMSBURG. If it is entertainment content generated from the scripted team, so it's a comedy or a drama, I have 2 genre VPs that handle those, like Animal Control, which is one of our comedies on the air, very successful. If it's a reality show or alternative, often called that would be unscripted. That's Masked Singer, MasterChef, all the cooking competitions, all the Gordon shows fall underneath the umbrella of unscripted. And so anything that is not news, not sports, and not Tubi that's on our air, we're in charge of all the campaign assets for those.
Wow.
So scripted, unscripted, and scripted includes comedy, drama, and animation. And unscripted includes every unscripted show you can think of. Like Special Forces 3 is in the process of being posted. They've already finished shooting. Or I think they might be in the middle of shooting, but anyhow, they're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And there's a reality show that doesn't have a prize. It's a very interesting sell for us because other reality shows, you get a prize, you get prize money, you win a trophy, you're voted the golden voice on whatever show. Masked Singer, you're revealed as the one that lasted the longest and you win the golden mask. But Special Forces, for example, is celebrities have signed up to do a 10-day grueling test to find out how far they can go. And whoever's left standing is the one that's left standing. There's no prize. There's no money. There's no trophy. There's the pride of the fact that you made it to the end. And most of us won't or wouldn't, right? If we did it. And so we sell that very differently than we would sell Masked Singer, which is a very glitzy Chinese stage floor show with panelists judging and evaluating and having fun back and forth. There's no fun in Special Forces. It's not a fun show. It's fun to watch, but inside the show, there's nothing happening where you're like, oh, that was a great laugh. No, it's hardcore. So we sell it differently. It's got a very authentic feel in the sell versus kind of a presentational feel that you get with some other reality shows, if that makes sense.
Now, I'm a huge consumer of Gordon Ramsay, like every show I watch. So it's crazy to me to think that every commercial that I've been watching for the last forever of my life is you. Like that is insane. Like literally we were watching MasterChef Junior 2 nights ago.
Yes.
Love it. The kids are great on
And
that. Yeah.
by the way, that each of his shows, you'll notice Gordon Ramsay has a different persona on each of his shows. He's a nurturer and a mentor on MasterChef Junior. He's a great leader and a mentor, but he's hard on him in MasterChef. But he's got 2 other judges with him, right? So he's different. Yeah. In Hell's Kitchen, he lives up to the name Hell's Kitchen. He's different Gordon. Yeah. Everybody, I've always wanted to do a gag spot. I've wanted to do a gag spot where I've cross-cut Hell's Kitchen, where he's railing people, to children from MasterChef Junior reacting to him, and you're like, he's so mean, and he's not. In real life, nicest guy ever, first of all, and really genuinely cares about everyone on every show. It's really amazing. And we try to protect that. And by the way, to your point, the kids are amazing on MasterChef Junior. He is a juggernaut on our air. Gordon Ramsay, we co-own the company with him, Studio Ramsay Global. Mm-hmm. We worked with him 4 years ago to come to that agreement because we have such value in him, and he values Fox and what we've done for him. It is a really great relationship and a really great marriage. And he's such a big celebrity. If you were to take all of our actors from all of our shows, sports people maybe would reach this celebrity, but if you took him to like an NFL game and you had him walking around the field and waving to the fans, he gets as big a reaction, if not the biggest, of anybody on our air, because he is so well known and everybody loves something about him, right? He's incredibly entertaining and very good at what he does.
He's really cool to watch.
Yeah.
I've loved watching him for.
You might say I'm obsessed with him. No, I can see that across the stuff. I love his stuff, but I have a question about
Don't let Chris on the lot.
Yeah, don't let me meet Gordon. No, I'm just playing.
We're gonna get you the next time Hell's Kitchen is recording. We're gonna get you at the restaurant having dinner at Hell's Kitchen.
Don't say that. I would love that. I would literally.
I will connect you with Brandy. Brandy will check in with the show and find out when they're shooting the next cycle, which I don't have that relatively or immediately handy. But it is a blast to go. Whether or not he comes to your table, you get to see him in person.
That's awesome,
Scott. That would literally make my entire life. I'm not even kidding.
We're doing it.
The Lot 1 podcast is brought to you by the Tourist Hat Coffee Company. You know what keeps me running on those long film sets, Stagey?
What's that, Chris?
Coffee. And you know what's the worst thing ever?
A swift kick in the pants.
No, bad coffee. So that's why I choose Tourist Hat Coffee Company's high quality coffee beans. Their artisan roasted single origin coffee and handcrafted blends are so much better than those stale stuff you get from those other brands.
Yeah, those things are bad.
Tourist Hat Coffee Company's coffee is artisan roasted, micro roasted, single origin, and their small batch roaster that handcrafts their blends to maximize peak freshness upon delivery. Family owned and operated. What more could you ask for from a coffee company, Deji?
I literally can't think of anything else.
If you're still not sold, a portion of each purchase goes towards contributing to some of their favorite nonprofit organizations, such as Animation Dance Community, Seeds of Hope International, and Beautiful Gate Orphanage.
These guys are good.
Make Tourist Hat Coffee Company your new go-to quality coffee choice with our exclusive offer for you, the Lot 1 podcast listener.
Oh, listen up, guys.
First-time customers can use the code LOT1BOGO at checkout to receive 1 free bag of coffee when you buy 2. That's right, Deji, buy 2, get 1 free.
Whoa.
So head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com and use promo code LOT1BOGO at checkout. Again, that is LOT1 BOGO at checkout. Whether you work in the film industry or not and want a delicious cup of coffee, this is the perfect time to stock up on your favorite blends of coffee or try something new. I know I'll be brewing Tourist Hat on my sets moving forward, Deji. Again, that's promo code LOT1 BOGO, LOT1 BOGO at checkout to claim your buy 2, get 1 free. Terms and conditions apply. Tourist Hat, coffee that fuels your adventure. Okay.
Awesome.
Before enough geeking out about Gordon, I have a question though. How early do you get material to kind of start designing these marketing campaigns? Because if you're saying like what the really intense one. I forgot the name of it.
Special
Special Forces is still filming. Are
Mm-hmm.
you seeing things now, or
That one comes out. That comes out late enough or further enough down the road that we'll have most of the footage in house and we can work with it, which is our preference. The longer this holds true for I think any art form, the longer you have with the original materials you're using, perhaps the better crafted, the more well crafted the assets will be because you've had time to live with them and let things surface in that creative process. You know, there's the incubation step. The second step of the creative process is there's a step where you're kind of subconsciously working on it while you're consciously working on it.
Yeah.
And that's where you need time. And that doesn't mean every show is able to deliver things weeks or months, preferably in advance. Some shows, based on when they're greenlit, the shooting schedule, talent availabilities, talent in front of and behind the camera, dictates that you get it a little bit later. If it's a show that we have marketed before, let's say it's a Masked Singer and they're shooting it a little closer to the air date, that's not as threatening or as intimidating, if you will, because we're familiar with the property. We understand it. We don't have to figure out what it is. It knows what it is. If it's a brand new show, scripted or unscripted, a little more lead time would be great because then we can start to mine what's really compelling. What are most compelling elements or assets inside the footage? The sound ups, the images, the moments, the emotional beats that really connect you. Like you talk about the kids in MasterChef Junior. If you get to know that show and those episodes, you find a particular storyline that is really compelling. So you know to capitalize on how a kid breaks down and Gordon goes around and gets down at his level and says, hey, take a breath. You can do this. I know the clock's racing. I know you forgot this, but if you just course correct right now, you're going to make it. And you're like, oh, this is really uplifting and positive. You need time to find those gems, those little treasures inside this sea of options. And so that's the ideal version in advance. Like when we had Wayward Pines, which is a little known show that aired only one summer, 2 cycles, but the first one was in a summer. We had it like months in advance. And we were able to really figure out the best way to bring it to market. And it also gave the agency we were working with opportunities to try things they wouldn't have had time to try if they were up against the gun to deliver the 30s so they could make air. And they were like, oh, we have a little bit of time. Let's try this. And they tried these scene-driven spots that to this day are some of the most compelling things we've generated on our air because they were able to just cut here and here and let this moment play out a little bit. And you're like, this show's super creepy. What's it about? So that wouldn't have happened if we were rushing, right? And so it depends. And then some shows, depending on how effects heavy they are very challenging because that's hard to do. You got to shoot the original footage. You got to shoot the plates. You got to build the effects. And sometimes they're still shooting and editing and they're like, oh, we can't get to that effect just yet. And we're like, we kind of need that effect to sell the first episode of this 9-1 or this 911 Lone Star. So sometimes we will commission a visual effect to be made. Yeah, like we had water wipe out the Hollywood sign. We got the footage of the Hollywood sign. We licensed it from the city of, Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. You have to license the use of that sign. And then we had water come down, a mudslide wiped out the first few letters of the sign. And then went into our promo. The show saw it and they was like, this is great. And we're like, yeah, we love it too. And they're like, we'll split the cost. We don't need to do that. You already did it. And we're like, you can have it. We're happy to share that cost with you and get it in that. We did that with the earthquake. We did it with the tsunami. We went down and shot plates of the Santa Monica Pier in every direction. And we commissioned a giant wave to be made because we needed spots to be in a football game or in the World Series or somewhere in front of when they were going to go do all that work. So sometimes we're building things in support of the show because schedule wise, it's just impossible for them to get in front of all of it. Right.
Well,
wow. So, okay, we can move on. I just want one last question on this because I'm so curious about it. Are you like, is like a producer sending you pieces of it of like, ooh, this would be good? Are you getting the whole episode and you guys watch it and you choose? Or is it
both. Sometimes we have, depending on if it's a really tight turnaround, rewind. If it's a really tight turnaround, we will ask to have an embedded producer on the show because they're shooting 15 cameras, all these different angles, and it's close to air date. So we need to get that footage and our producers making selects and pulling them. Other times it's a little further out, but they don't have time to cut together the line cut yet. So they just send us dailies and we get all the footage. And then sometimes on our side, we'll start to build scenes and build the show and build the movie or whatever. And then the other version is they send us the episode fully cut and we go through and we go, we got it. This is what you focused on. This is the tone musically.
Right.
This is the color treatment you're giving this footage. Like Gotham, for example, or Lucifer, or any of these other kind of moody, very specific color corrections and specific looks and specific ways of treating the footage and audio treatment. Those we love getting full online masters, air masters, because we know exactly the look they're going for and the vibe and the feel. So we can stay as true to that as possible in our campaign, which is our goal. We never want to switch the campaign to where you see the show and go, this is not what I was promised, right? You can't do that in TV.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like you really oversee a bunch of different types of advertising, right?
Hmm?
Okay.
Yeah, you're at any given minute, or any given meeting, you're going through the content for something. And one of the spots is a very didactic, very informative. It's a brand new game show called the 1% Club. And you have to explain what the 1% Club, if you just heard the phrase 1% Club, you might think this is about wealth or this is about something else, right? Because that's often used for wealth references. But in this case, it's 100 people are asked these questions, or America's asked these questions, and only 1% got this question right, but 15% got this one, 25%, 50%. So where are you on the scale? And it's not about how much you know, it's how your brain works. So you kind of got to explain it a little bit. Or the floor with Rob Lowe. There are 81 or 100 people on a floor, and you take over territories by challenging them in their category, and you go up in a head-to-head contest. And I got to show gameplay in order for you to fully understand what is it. Now we got a second season, and a third season, I believe, has been commissioned. There's not much of a burden, or as much of a burden, to explain what it's about and to show more of the gameplay. Show Rob, because Rob Lowe's a great game show host. He's a great host, period. He's great. He's on our areas in 911, Lone Star. And so it depends on what it is. And if it's a known property, a 911, for example, you don't have to explain what firefighters do or what emergency responders do. But you might have to explain a new game show. You might have to explain a show called Murder in a Small Town, which has a detective you've never met before, a new relationship he has with somebody in that town. And what makes him special is the way he sees crimes and sees what's there that shouldn't be there, or what's missing that should be there. And that's how he solves these things. You kind of have to learn, how are we going to position the show and him as a character that's most appealing. We can't just tell you what the show's about if it's not compelling and appealing and makes you want to learn more or see more. We have to find that angle that makes it worth your time, because the currency of time and attention is the most valued thing now, because you only have so much, right? And everybody's trying to get your attention. Social media, all the other platforms, all the other broadcasters,
content,
cables. There's so much you could consume. The abundance of choice often leads to no choice, which is a very big challenge for us.
Do you feel like that has become worse over the last 2 years? I think I already know the answer, but
yes, and it's because of our CEO just did an article in an interview in Deadline. He talks directly about that, about the overabundance of choice because of the streaming wars and the streamers spending house money to make everything and make it all as high as they can at the production level and the volume of it. And that's flooded the industry with content, but not all of it can find the loyal audience base, the fandom. That's the holy grail of the marketing funnel, where people are out there telling you got to see this, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you get people to have that kind of affinity when they aren't spending much time with each of these things?
Yeah.
So yes, the abundance of choice has created often no choice. There are actually studies about it. And so can we just dial down a little bit the volume? And John Landgraf of FX has talked about this peak television, where we hit an apex and hit the bliss point where there was the right amount for everybody. And then there just became way too much. So it's not every show is able to cut through the way you would want them to. So now imagine the sea of options, the volume of content that's made by content creators, influencers, people on social, and the way people consume things differently, especially when they're on social, where that is their content experience. Now imagine the challenge on show creators and developers, producers, actors, writers, and the marketing team to try to cut through and get people to move over and consume it wherever it's available, on Tubi, on Hulu, on our air, wherever they can consume it. We have deals with Max, Amazon, Hulu, and a bunch of our stuff goes to Tubi as well because we own Tubi. And so how do you get them to change their viewing habits, right? Or incorporate your content into their viewing habits?
Well, whatever Fox is doing, I will say, especially with their like game shows and all the Ramsay shows, like I choose like certain narrative things and I'll watch it, but I'm always like, there's not enough Ramsay. Like I'll finish like the like Food Stars, boom, just finished it, and then it's like, okay, Hell's Kitchen's done. I can't do Hell's Kitchen. I can't, Master Chef is
Right.
slow. Like, and it's like, for me personally, as a consumer of a lot of Fox shows, like the reality shows, it's working. Like there's just enough to keep me going between all the narrative I like to watch. That
Right.
maybe you guys found your stride, or
Yeah, actually, we take a lot of risk in our reality programming. Like once Masked Singer hit the air, and you're like, this show's crazy, right? There was someone in my office when that came out, when they were working on the campaign, and we had all the episodes of the first season, and they were explaining to me why it was going to be popular. And I was like, this is the opposite of most singing competitions. You don't know the singer, you don't have a reason to root for them when it comes to their identity and their brand. You might be rooting for their story because they might give you tidbits, but you don't get to know them until the day they're kicked off the show. How's that going to work? And it worked great. And so then they're like, let's try some other crazy. And they tried, let's try some other crazy stuff. And they did. And not all of it worked. There was the masked dancer. And I was like, do people care about dancing as much as they care about singing? And the answer is no. And we already had a dance show called So You Think You Can Dance, which is very popular. It's got a very loyal fan base. And so that one we didn't need the masked dancer, right? But we tried it for one cycle, and then we're like, yep, that didn't work. And we tried the same thing for comedies. Very hard to cut through with the broadcast comedy. It's harder to take comedic risks because we have standards and practices that tell us what we can and can't say and do. So our jokes might not be as risky as a cable or a streaming series or comedy. Same thing for the dramas. You can't be as graphic. You can't say or show as much. So there are some constraints creatively, but that just causes you to have to find a way to be more creative and more unconventional inside the parameters and the guidelines you're given, right?
Hey, film industry folks, Deji here from the Lot 1 podcast. We've got big news. You can now be a VIP member of our film-loving family by joining our Patreon page. Get early access to episodes, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and connect with fellow filmmakers. Your support means so much to us, and it helps us keep the reel rolling. Head on over to patreon.com/the Lot 1 podcast, and let's make movie magic together. Thanks for being a part of the Lot 1 podcast journey. I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about, I guess, like, what are some of the opportunities and like positions inside of like, I guess that exist in the creative advertising space?
This could fill the rest of our time together.
Okay.
It really could. It's amazing how many hands have to touch these elements to look and sound and be properly color corrected, properly printed, properly put up, properly circulated or sent out digitally, properly functioning as a game or an interface or a filter or what have you, or a partnership with an influencer where it's effective and it's true to their brand, but it's also true to our brand, developing that relationship with them and giving them time to work with our materials. So if you were to walk the halls, on the second floor, you have writer producers, you have editors, you have graphics designers, a litany of those. You have 38 editors, 25 graphics designers, you have project managers, you have producers, creative directors, you have VPs that are overseeing genres. That's in the creative side when it comes to audiovisual or design elements. You also have an operational team that handles getting the assets into the building successfully from the show, from the shoot, from the special shoot, whatever. Those assets being put into the system and being usable. You have an infrastructure entertainment technology team that's making sure all the edit systems, all the design stations, all the support media asset management systems, all the infrastructure that hosts the footage to remote editors and local editors, that's all fully functioning. You have your finishing team that after it comes in, goes into an offline edit bay or goes to a design station after it gets offline edited or designed and gets approved, however it gets approved by us and by the show producers, it's got to go into its finishing stage where it gets polished, right? It's going through the car wash and getting the wax and it's being cleaned up and it looks great, sounds great. That's a whole separate group of people. That's unit represented, finishers, color correctors, the resolve artist, flame artist, smoke artist. You also have in a mix, several mix studios in another building because they're too big to put in this building. Several mix studios where you're going to record voiceover. If there is voiceover, you're going to bring in the offline edit, bring in the offline mix, and you're going to polish that mix. And you're going to put in things that might be missing that we would want to look for. You're going to make sure all the dialogue line is audible, make sure all of the narration or all the sound design is just right, not too much, not too little. If there's a lyric that's supposed to be heard and then brought back down because you're weaving the music, that happens at that level in the mix bay. Then this is just that 130. There's a 30, 20, 15, 10, and 5. Each one of those might get Friday, day and date, Friday, tomorrow, tonight, and next versions. Each one of those gets that, to the point that we deliver 76 plus thousand AV assets in finished form annually. And it is insane. And that number goes up and down. And those are the broadcast 5 versions. Those are 16:9 horizontal. What about 1:1 for Facebook? What about 9:16 vertical for other social platforms that are most likely going to be consumed on a social device or on your phone? What about off-air versions that go to cable outlets where they have a rule that says you can't mention Fox more than once? Now, the spot might start with tonight on Fox, blah, 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 at the end, tonight on Fox. And they might say, yeah, can't say it twice because you're playing this on another cable network. And they're like, we'll air it, but only if you say Fox once. So there's a different version of the spot that only has one Fox mention. And then we have versions that say next day Hulu. We have alternate versions depending on what the show is. It's on Max, it's on Fox. Then you can go see the first season on Max. We have catch-up spots that say it's coming in the fall, but this summer is a perfect time to catch up on all your episodes of Alert or Accused or fill in the blank. And so on and so forth. And then you have music versions where you've licensed a song that's really great to sell this brand new show called Rescue High Surf. So you're going to use this great Weezer song, and it's amazing. The lead singer loved it, called the editor and thanked them for doing such a great job with the song. But we can only afford that song for 12 weeks, let's say. So it runs 3 months out, but you have other spots that are going to play or spots that play once the show launches. And you're going to be using different music, needle drop, custom library, premium library, special compositions. So those are alternate versions. And then you're not just making one spot. You're making a multitude of spots because you're targeting certain demographics depending on where these assets are going based on the strategy teams, where they've aimed these things. And that's just the audio visual. I've not gotten to all the different print and the breakouts of the print, because the print goes on billboards, bus shelters, bus sides, tall walls, wide walls, tunnels. It goes in other placements, like it goes on platform art. So now the image that's a beautiful vista for special forces with a tiny person suspended on a cable between two peaks, that's great on a billboard because I can register what it is. But when I shrink it down to chiclet size or tile size or platform art size, right, that tiny image, that little tiny person on a rope, you're like, if you were scrubbing through whatever platform you're on, you won't even register what that image is. So now I got to find a face and make sure I got a face with special forces so you can connect with Tom Sandoval, love him or hate him, whatever, and say, oh, I would like to watch that show. I know what it's about. That guy's struggling. I can see Robert Ory's face. I can see Jojo Siwa's face in the middle of trying to hold on or trying to, versus I don't even know what that image is. So now you're making alternate art depending on where the art is traveling. And we haven't gotten to social, where someone's invented a game for special forces where you're holding a push-up and you go up and down in your push-up to the camera, which adjusts where your guy is as this changing maze is coming toward you. And you're trying to go for 2 minutes holding a push-up pose and going up and down to get to the end of the thing, go as far as you can, whatever, which I think has garnered the most digital hits of any single thing we've made for social.
Wow.
And that's just that. And that doesn't include,
that's a huge team.
Huge team. there's PR. Where do these people that were on Special Forces, where do they go to talk about having been on Special Forces? What talk shows are they going to go on? All the ones in New York, any of the ones in LA? What interviews are they going to do for Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, et cetera? And we're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have all the Special Forces contestants or recruits, technical term, come to Fox. We set up this amazing red carpet, this gray carpet or blue carpet, but we set it up and it's in the lobby because we have this amazing lobby in Building 100. We have a special shooting space. We set up interviews for custom behind the scenes EPK after the fact, because you can't do it during Special Forces. You can't do any EPK during, because they're in the middle of 10 days intensive. There'll be none of that. So now we're going to have them on the carpet telling us, why'd you choose to do the show? Who cried the most? Who struggled the most? Who was your cheerleader? Who got you through the rough times? Why did you end up having to leave the show? You had shoulder injury. You tapped out because it was too hard. Whatever. You have fear of heights, and they had a bunch of high stuff. And then put them all in a room and have a round table and have a former contestant, Dr. Drew, who was on the first season, sit there and ask them questions. All right, what'd you get out of this? Did your family know you were doing it? What did they think of you? I wanted to show my kids I'm strong. And so that becomes a 20-minute custom piece of content that plays and has like 12 million people engage with it. And then you have segments from that and segments from the red carpet. So you start to see all these crazy assets go everywhere and become this massive 360 campaign. In fact, I could send you, and you could share with this podcast, I can send you a link to an Accused 360, which is a 4-minute reel that is an overview of the Accused campaign. And when you see that in 4 minutes, you're like, holy. And that's what you have to say. I'm sorry I'm using the S word. But that's what you say when you see it. You go, oh my God, I cannot believe what goes into a campaign. And each thing you see, a team of people are responsible for making it work and making it look great and sound great and be the most compelling version of it. So there are art directors, there are strategists, there are media buyers, there are on-air promo placement reps inside the media on-air promo team. There are PR reps. There are talent relations individuals that deal directly with talent and let them know where they need to be. There are assistants and coordinators across that entire fleet. There are development executives that are on the development team that are developing these shows that we're talking about bringing to market. I'm only in the marketing space. I'm not in the development space, but there's a whole separate floor of development. Then there's finance, whole separate floor of finance, and they like to keep a lid on things. Don't be crazy with your spend, right? And so you have your finance side, and I haven't even really gotten into this. You have a research team led by an amazing group of people, led by Will Summers and Laurel Fitzgerald. They are so great. And they are always trying to find ways to mine more meaningful, useful information from the volumes and reams of data they are able to get across all of the research from their partners, that the companies they use for research, whether it's testing pilots, testing promos, testing shows, whether it is getting information from where it performs on a streaming platform, a Hulu, a Max, an Amazon, and having that data be meaningful and usable for us as marketers for the current version of the show, the next iteration of the show, feedback to development so they can change the way they develop the show. For example, you mentioned Food Stars earlier. Chris, you mentioned that you had just finished it. The first season of Food Stars was Gordon and the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
The second season, one of the ways they got feedback from the first season, they said, you know what would make this a little bit more interesting is if he were himself also competing, and he's competing with Lisa Vanderpump to see which of the two teams will win in this show by the finale. And so that makes it way more interesting than just the first season. So we're always trying to evolve our shows simultaneously while we evolve our campaigns. So if you name a role that you could think up, there's probably a version of it in this building.
Right? That's crazy.
And just
there's
to
clarify,
clarify,
there's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot. You're going to have to cut my answer way down.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the movie credits, right? You see the hundreds and hundreds of people.
Who are these people?
Yeah. Just to clarify too, for those who may not know what it is, when you say offline, what does that mean? And then also, what is EPK?
So offline is the editorial process where the footage, it can also apply to design, but they don't really say it like that. But offline really specifically refers to the edit systems that are nonlinear, an Avid, a Premiere, an iMovie if you're doing it at home and it's a smaller, lower scale, something or other. So it's where the footage goes into a system and you're playing around with the footage to come up with your trailer, come up with your TV spots. and they're not high resolution. They're not full color yet. They might look not great. They might sound not so great. They might be low res. They might be rough. The color might be really bad. The takes might not be all the perfect takes because you're using dailies. So in the offline process, you're in there working with the clay and kind of shaping it, but it's not its final version. It's almost like if you looked at it from automotive design, when you draw the car, that's kind of your script. When you actually take clay and shape the car, that's kind of your offline. When you actually go engineer the car, that's moving it to the finish pipeline. And when you actually make the car with the shiny and the wheels and the engine, that's your online finishing process where you're actually sending a real version of it out into the world. TV spots, trailers go through that exact process. There's the sketch, I'm scripting it. There's the offline, I'm kind of assembling a rough cut. I'm shaping it out of the clay. Then there's, hey, I like this version. This looks really good. I've tested it. It's going to be great. Let's finish it. Okay, now I'm going to go actually make this in its full color, full, 5.1 sound version and ship it with a full mix, real voiceover, finished graphics. Remember, simultaneously, there are motion graphics designers that are designing the motion graphics that go into the promos that are on brand with the look of the show so that all those threads pull through from the campaign to your show experience. So it's a whole thing. Offline refers to working with it before it goes to finish.
Super rough version of it.
Super rough version, yeah. And there are works in progress known as WIPs. There are POCs, which are proof of concepts. An EPK is a behind the scenes reference or BTS reference, which is an electronic press kit. And it really isn't always an electronic press kit. It is more the non-broadcast, on air or off air assets, usually longer, that go on social media that might get sent to a journalist to get them interested and say, hey, here's a really great interview with a particular talent from our show. Maybe you should do an interview with them. Here's a clip that we did of them, or we had of them saying and responding to certain questions. Here is Howard Gordon explaining to you why, sitting in a theater chair, explaining to the camera what his thinking is behind the anthology series called Accused. And if I have him tell you each episode is a whole new cast, it's based on usually a real case, and you almost never know where the story is going to go. And to hear Howard Gordon tell you this, what keeps it interesting is you think you know where it's going and you almost never do because it's so well told. And they're from a perspective you take for granted. And in the end, you realize, oh my gosh, the person that's been leading me through this is actually not the victim. They're the perpetrator. Or it didn't play out where this person is guilty of something. This person did something else and it's real. So when he says it to camera and that asset travels as a first look, like a trailer that gives you behind the scenes, here's a first look at Accused. Fox is in the middle of making it. Here's what they're making. Here's why it's important. Here's why it's true or special to the people behind it, the authors behind it, because it's meaningful in this way. That is hard to do in 30-second promo, right? 30-second promo is just to really give you a sampling of what it's like to watch the show. EPK, behind the scenes, value-added material, is designed to give you more of the why and the dimension behind the thinking that went into the show, right?
It's like a pitch to the advertisers for the show. Yeah.
Fair. Nice. That's a much better answer than that.
I just
say that.
No.
So do you mind explaining, like, what are some of the steps one could take in order to get into sort of this field and to do something along these lines?
Yeah, I would 100%. I can offer some thoughts on that. And they are, maybe one of the first steps is there something that you enjoy that's attractive to you about the field? Like, oh, I love movie trailers. Some people love movies and love movie trailers. So they want to get into the trailer world. So they want to go to the trailer agency world and they love being there. But if they're like, I don't really care about movies as much as I love video games, right? A friend of mine used to be a trailer editor, but his real passion is video games. He now works for Naughty Dog, cutting movie trailers or trailers for video games because he loves video games, right? And then he's like, it's his paradise, right?
Yeah.
And there might be other people like, I don't really want to be an editor. I don't want to sit there and work with the footage. That's not my jam or my favorite thing. But I love working with people. I love helping come up with ideas. I want to be a writer producer and kind of produce the trailer. And if you're like, I don't want to be on the creative side, I want to be on the more strategic side. The person, Ryan Keating, who does our promo placements. Where do our promos go? When are we going to start this campaign? In what particular placement, or on what air and what off air? He is very much about building really meaningful relationships with other people that are logistical and strategic thinkers like himself. But he really does value and foster really meaningful connections with the people that do the planning, like who plans these campaigns. So he's incredibly gifted in that area. He doesn't necessarily want to be in an edit bay. That doesn't attract him. So I would ask the question, what is it that I find I get the most fulfillment out of in the things I like to do in life in general? And then if one can answer this question, I would ask the question, how would I like to spend my day? And if somebody says, I'd like to be around a lot of people, editing is probably not for you. You're going to be in a room with the door shut and a bunch of footage. You'll have interaction with various people, but it's sporadic throughout the day. If you're like, no, I'd rather be in a more social role, maybe strategy, maybe talent relations, maybe PR, maybe you do want to be in the creative team, but you want to be on the producing side or on the writer producer side or on the executive side where you get to kind of oversee a number of campaigns. Maybe you I like to do technical stuff. I like to be proficient at it and successful. Maybe you want to be on the finishing side where you take it after it's offline and you oversee its finishing to make sure you deliver this amazing finished piece. A friend of mine runs finishing for one of the shops that does a lot of Sony work. So he handles everything that's going to finish from any number of vendors or agencies that have created it. And so if you ask that question, say, how do I want to spend my day? That can kind of inform choices. Like if you grew up as a musician and you love music and you love when you hear great music put to amazing footage, maybe you want to work on the music team. You want to be on the Fox Entertainment music team, or you want to be a music supervisor that works at a trailer house and helps find the perfect song to drive a campaign. And oftentimes when someone says, have you seen that trailer? Did you see that campaign? Did you watch that? It's not just because the footage is beautiful and it's well cut. It's oftentimes driven by amazing audio, whether it's a song or custom composition or incredible sound design. Oftentimes what makes it stand out is the way it hooks you with its audio. So maybe you love the music side of it. And so if you can answer some of those questions, you might have a better shot at identifying the role. Then find people that are near that role or in that role and ask them, how'd you get in that role? And a publicist might say, oh, I originally worked for an agent and I really liked dealing with the outlets that would have my talent on them. So, but I also like being closer to the content. At an agency, it's different than being inside Fox where you're closer to the development phase. And the head of Gene Gurin, the head of publicity, is in meetings with Michael Thorne, the president of Fox Entertainment Network, who's in charge of all the stuff that goes on our air. Maybe they want to work hand in hand. So if you can identify that as well, I don't know if this is helping. And then I would seek the advice and counsel and wisdom and suggestions of people that are closer to the role you're trying to get to. They don't have to be in it. They might just know somebody and say, oh my gosh, a friend of mine does that for a living. Let me connect you to him. One of my friends' daughter wants to learn animation. And I said, oh, well, if she's into it that much, let me know. We own Bento Box, right? Which is a large animation company that makes Bob's Burgers, for example, among many things. And I said, the guys that run that are so nice and so amazing. I'm sure if I reached out to Joel and said, Joel, would you mind having a 15, 20-minute informational Zoom, which I have no doubt he would offer 30 minutes, with this person who wants to get into your world and give them some advice? That's invaluable, better advice than I could ever give her on how to get into the world of animation, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can find people that would be willing to give up their time, and I think a lot of people, look at me, I think a lot of people are happy to tell you what they think, right? And give you their advice or their perspective, offer their guidance, right? And so I'd leverage that and say, I'd like some guidance. And you mean it. You actually do want guidance and they're happy to give it. So win-win for everybody. Yeah. And it doesn't mean they give you the shortcut, because I think you're better off sometimes taking the long route because you learn more and you fail more and you get stronger from failing more. And then when you get in the role, you're ready or more prepared and more ready to expand in and fill the role and carry the responsibilities that come with the role and be a high performer, right? I think failure is your best path to getting to a successful career.
Nice.
We're in a very social industry. You never want to leave set without getting the numbers of everyone on your crew or the producer, the AD or whatever. So like literally
Yeah.
I was totally expecting that same answer. But you just got to talk to people, man. It's
Yeah.
literally.
And I think the way you at any given moment, you are putting your brand out there, and in any one exchange, you could make a really positive impression with somebody that they might remember later when you reach out to them, or they might not. But you're better off to make it a positive one if you can, and be a hard worker, be a hustler, be a smart worker, be a collaborative worker. There's some people that just don't have a collaborative mindset. And I was like, how have you survived in this industry? It's the pinnacle of collaboration, right? I don't
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
And also I think it feels good when you work well
Yeah.
with others and you do
Mhm.
something truly as a team. I think there are a lot of people that do want sole credit, and they're more like, look at me, versus I really do get a charge out of fostering and building and helping lead a team, or just being part of something where I get to help contribute and make something great. And it's really the Navy SEALs analogy, where they're all holding the boat up,
Yeah.
and they can
Yeah.
pick out the ones that are going to drop out based on who's not really holding the boat up. It's that, right?
Yeah.
Hey, unlock exclusive interviews, explore diverse roles in the film industry, and join the cinematic journey on our Patreon at patreon.com/A-Lot1Podcast.
So we're coming to the end of our adventure here, but we do have a listener question. And it is, how do you curb negative public perception on a project?
On the project, or possibly on an actor in the project?
Either one.
Okay. In most cases, I think if the negative perception is based on something that someone involved in the project has done outside of the project, right? That's their public persona, that they've made some maybe comments they shouldn't have made, or they've done things they shouldn't have done, or they've just, we've had this happen. They've said things that were insensitive and they didn't realize they were insensitive. I think the best thing that I've seen Fox do is our publicity team goes right at it. I call it turning into the storm. They turn into the storm. They go right at it and they say, hey man, we got to own this. We can't try to dodge it. We can't try to act like it didn't happen. We can't try to cover it up. There's none of that.
Yeah.
There is, hey guys, this person made a mistake, and they need to be enlightened on why it's a mistake, how it's impacting people, how it's not good for us as a community, as a whole, in our industry. And so I think I would suggest being honest with your followers, your viewers. And I think that's the other A when it comes to AI. There's artificial intelligence, which the word is artificial. Then there's my AI, which is authenticity intelligence, where you actually do know that people are more loyal and connected with brands that aren't full of it, that are actually genuinely walking the walk that they're talking, doing the things they're doing because they genuinely believe in the cause, not because they were told you should have a cause, which is a different reason, right?
Yeah.
And so I think being as authentic to your viewers as you can. When it is perception of a show based on the sampling that they're given, or the word of mouth on the show, or the first season wasn't great and you almost can't recover from it, because I don't know about you guys, but I give a show very little leeway. If it doesn't work in the first few minutes or first few episodes, you're not going to say, I'd like to watch 20 more episodes before I decide if I like this show. No. This does not happen.
Yeah.
You do not have that kind of time.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the less you have of that time.
Right.
And so I think, depending on how bad it is, like the movie Cats, for example, when that teaser dropped, there was no recovery. There was never going to be a recovery. A friend of mine was the editor of the trailer, and he was on his way to a mix of the trailer because it was going to finish. Yeah. And he got a phone call from the client that said, you can turn around and you can go back to the office. We're going to retool the trailer to deal with the backlash of the teaser we just dropped. And it was instantaneous.
Wow.
Right? And the word of mouth was so negative. Waterworld suffered great negative word of mouth too, right?
Yeah.
And so it depends on how bad the word of mouth is. If it's a show that isn't that strong, you can only fool people so much before you say, it's amazing. It's the most amazing. You can't say it. If you don't believe it, you got to say, hey, this show's really interesting. This show's got this. You can really build up and showcase what's strong about it. But not every show is for everyone. And this myth that everything can be for a quadrant is just a myth. And you're better off to say, what is our show? Who's it for? Who likes these types of shows? Let's speak to them. Let's speak to them honestly. Let's speak to them authentically. Let's present the show in a way that's authentic and that is true to what it is. So the tone of the campaign is the tone of the experience of the show versus I've seen this happen, taking a show or a movie that is maybe more of a drama and trying to sell it as a lighthearted, feel-good comedy. No, sell it as a drama. And if it's a lighthearted, feel-good comedy, don't try to sell it as a drama that it's not, because people will be disappointed, right? If it's a musical, don't hide that it's a musical. Let's just try that. Right? Start there. And so I think being authentic. But when you get bad press, you assess the situation. And sometimes, for example, there were some accusations related to Cosmos when Cosmos was coming back in 2018, I think it was. We had one round in 2014. I think 4 or 5 years later, it was coming back to Fox. And some things happened on a set that weren't very positive. And so the show got pulled off the air, was put on hold. And during the investigation, where it turned out they said, hey, everything's okay, it's not as bad as we thought it was, or it was a misunderstanding. I don't remember the summation because we were no longer working on it. But it never became a full campaign on our air after that point. It went to Nat Geo and they aired it. And we handed them all the assets we had been developing because we were told, stop down on that. You're not working on it right now. So sometimes you just have to say, we're going to be responsible schedulers and programmers, and we're not going to air that. We would never air something that has something that's offensive. In fact, we once had a sizzle that played when we became a separate entity and we sold all those assets to Disney. We had a whole summation sizzle of the history of our network. And it had all the footage from, Joan Rivers to Married with Children, all the way through In Living Color, all the way up until X-Files and all those other ones, until now, and Empire and everything that was on at the time. And there were some shots from one of our shows where can remain nameless. And it was a musical show. And it's long off of our air. But since that show was on our air, one of those cast members was accused and found guilty of some really not awesome behavior, right? And so when there was a shot of a group of them on stage dancing, someone said, oh, hey, I need you to punch in and pan to the right just a little bit and frame that person out. It's not that we're trying to hide that they were on the show. We're just trying not to showcase that they're on our air now. That is the show, and I can't change that. But right now, we're not going to celebrate that because we don't stand for that. Our principles and our moral compass says we can never in any way, shape, or form support that kind of behavior. So we're going to frame them out of the shot. And we did that. We punched in. We actually had 911, the tsunami episode where it floods and a bunch of people get hurt. The tsunami hits and everything. But the very last shot of the trailer shows a little girl clinging to a pole in crazy rushing water. And our head of publicity at the time, Shannon Ryan, who's now over at ABC, large in charge, president of everything TV-wise over at ABC. She said to me, she goes, hey, do me a favor. Let's lose that last shot. There were floods just now, like yesterday, the day before. There have been some floods in the southern part of the country, southeastern part. Let's be sensitive to the fact there are a lot of people going through flood situations. Tsunami is kind of exaggerated. Like not much of the country goes through tsunamis on a regular basis.
Yeah, right.
But having a girl in a flood-like environment, take that out. Or if there are acts of violence in our world or our country, there's a school shooting or a nightclub shooting or any of those heinous, horrible things that happen, and we have a show that's got a lot of gun stuff in it, we'll be very mindful in how much gun play we show. And is it necessary? We kind of lean on the side of let's not showcase violence anyhow, but especially now since our society is hurting from something that's really tragic, right?
Yeah.
Just being responsible.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely important, I think, to be sensitive to the things that are happening in the world, for sure. We have one more question. And this is Chris's most important question.
Let's go. All right,
It
Scott.
is so important.
I've heard about this question before. Heard about it.
All right, Scott. What is the one piece of quick, simple, one sentence advice you could give anyone at any stage in their career trying to enter marketing, maybe Fox, just their career in general?
In general, I have the advantage of asking this question to a lot of guest speakers that speak to my UCLA and my Santa Monica college classes. So I've heard a lot of really great answers.
What's your answer?
Yeah. And what's interesting is a lot of those resonate with a lot of people say,
Yeah.
be kind, be nice to everybody,
Hmm.
work well with everybody. Obama said when he was asked this question, he said, just be somebody who gets stuff done, right?
Mm.
Don't just be a person who talks about it. Be somebody who actually goes off and does something of value, right? And I think all of that, swirls around how can you be of value to the people around you in any given situation. I was on another podcast. I call it safe passage. How can you offer the person you're dealing with, persons plural, person singular, in any given situation, safe passage to the thing they're trying to get to, whatever that is. So if you look at it as, I am here and I have the power and the ability and the influence and the courage to just help this other person in some small way, then help, right? Offer to help.
Yeah.
And that applies to the people you love, don't really connect with. It applies to all of them. And I think that's a really important distinction. Don't just work hard for the people you get along with and that you connect with. Work hard, work well, work lovingly, work respectfully, work in a collaborative, courageous fashion with everybody so that everyone can count on you. No one thinks, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get a full effort from that person. They know you'll always give them their best effort because that's who you choose to be. Not because you want that reputation, not because you know it makes a difference, even though it does, not because you're trying to get into heaven or some of that stuff, because it's who you choose to be, because the world is just a better experience for you when you offer that energy, right?
Yeah.
Help people.
Help people.
That's great. That's really good.
Just cut to that. Just cut to the help people.
We're going to keep it all, Scott.
So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you,
really
guys.
quickly though, where can people find you?
Best place to find me is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is good. I'm pretty good at responding to LinkedIn inbox messages, right?
Yeah.
Especially when they're articulate and genuine versus kind of form letter. Get a lot of those, right? Vendors, agencies, voiceover guys. They're like, hey, I do this. Check out my reel. Let's do some work together. And I was like, all right, we're not trying to connect here. We're just trying to get work, right? But if someone's like, hey, man, can I have a minute? Can we connect? Can we talk more about this one thing, this one role? Is there a role that does this? I'm happy to offer any perspective I can if it's of value. And if I don't have that perspective, but I know somebody who does, like if somebody asks me, how are you using AI for your machine learnings across your Word programs, your Microsoft platforms on the lot, I'd be like, I'm not the guy for that, right?
Yeah.
But LinkedIn, short answer, you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. So Scott Edwards at LinkedIn.
Yes, I don't know what the exact thing is, but yes, Scott Edwards on LinkedIn.
Well, they can figure it out.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a picture of Fox Studios in there.
Yeah.
For Fox. Yeah.
I think that the audience is smart enough; they can figure out how to.
They can figure it out. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yes.
Appreciate you, all your time.
Likewise. Thank you guys so much. Really enjoyed it.
All right. And maybe we'll see you on the set of Hell's Kitchen.
Yes. If you're going to go to dinner at Hell's Kitchen, I'm coming with you. Okay?
Awesome.
Yes.
Let's do it,
good.
Scott. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm down. Let's do it.
Love it.
All righty. We'll catch you later.
All right.
Bye.
Sounds good.
Okay, that was pretty cool, right, Chris? I mean, we are going to do way more chatting and probably a lot of cool conversations and just informative stuff over on the after show. So if you want a little bit more, jump on over. And that's also a wrap for today's Lot 1 podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave a review and share with your best friend, the alien from planet Jupiter. It really helps others find us. If you're not a part of our exclusive Patreon community yet, what? head on over to patreon.com/the Lot One Podcast for early access, bonus content like the after show, which you should go watch right now, and more. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to our incredible Patreon supporters, because your backing keeps the Lot One Podcast lights on. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot One Podcast. That is the Lot, L-O-T, #1 podcast for behind the scenes content and updates. We are now accepting listener mail. So if you got any questions for us or our guests, drop us a line. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about Lot One Productions and all we've got going on over at the studio, check us out at lot1productions.com. That is LOT, #1 productions.com. Special thanks to Tourist Hat Coffee Company for sponsoring this week's episode. Head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com to redeem your exclusive buy two, get one free deal with the promo code LOT1BOGO. That's LOT, #1, BOGO at checkout. Terms and conditions may apply. Again, that's LOT1BOGO at checkout. Until next time, keep those creative fires burning, dream big, and remember, the filmmaking journey is a ride worth taking. See you next week.